Hi friends, good evening, and this is your host Ankit joining you from Delhi, India, and we have Kimberly Calhoun joining us from North Carolina, US, United States of America, and today is Celeb Tuesday, 2nd June 2020, episode number 82 on World News hashtag COVID-19, and we will be discussing a lot of interesting discussions about celebrities and how they're living their life during COVID and things like that. And good morning, Kimberly. How are you doing? And how is the United States of America?
Good evening, Ankit from the United States of America. In my life and world, I feel very blessed. But what I'd like to do before we get started is say a prayer worldwide and globally and in a way to bring peace because the world has been suffering enough. And what is happening in the US is very disheartening and disappointing, not just to the people whose homes are being destroyed or the people whose lives felt like that they were being violated, but just in general. And so I'd like to pray that there's peace among us and that we find the strength and courage to see beyond our own personal prejudice or beyond our own personal whatever we understand, and to see what others need. And let's reach out and help each other at this
Yeah.
point. I was very, very proud of the government for taking swift action the way they did and to charge a person. They did take some deliberate time to make sure they did charges that they knew would stick. And again, people have asked, why not this and why not that? If you understand the justice system the way I do, it is sometimes better to get a charge that will stick than to take the risk of doing charges that you know are right but won't process. So you want to make sure that you don't give any attorneys, defense attorneys, a means to find a loophole to get somebody off. And you want justice to be served. But anyway, I want to pray for peace and ask the world to take a moment today to just reflect on the blessings they have in their lives. And if they feel like they don't have a blessing in life, reach out to Ankit and I or somebody on IBM TV and share with us why and let us help you. But let us join together and let us work together to unite and heal and become stronger as a world, not a country, as a world. Amen. Thank you, Ankit, for giving me that moment. I have a video that I want to share with the world here as soon as we get it fixed and up. It is from a celebrity and a very good, dear friend of mine who found the courage. He's a quiet man, but he found the courage to stand in front of the public to share with the world what he believes. And I think it's the best message I've heard from anyone. And I mean, any leader, anyone. And it's a message of unite. And I hope that we can get that video up. For some reason, I think somebody doesn't want this video up because I've tried to download it and play it, upload it, share it with Ankit to get, and it won't play anywhere but on my phone. But we're going to get that fixed, folks. And meanwhile, we've got a celebrity waiting in backstage. It's our very own IBM TV, Sasha Starr from Chess Stars. Whoops. Namaste.
Master, how are you?
Wow. Welcome, Sasha. Good morning. I'm so glad that you're
Thank
joining
you.
us.
I would like to start with a question. Sasha, what do you mean by Russia and what do you mean by Canada? I'm not talking about the country, but the word. Because we know what you mean by United States of America. So just wanted to understand the meaning of Canada and Russia.
It's an interesting question. Canada is, as you know, it used to be same as India, a colony of United Kingdom, and it developed into independent country quite recently, I must say. And as such, with a small population of only 36 million people, I think it's doing quite well. Um, at least it's perceived as a peaceful, well-governed country with peaceful citizen, uh, quite healthy economy. Um, are there any disadvantages of living in Canada? probably, but very few. Frankly, it's very hard to me. Between you and me, I'm quite critical of Canada and its certain policies and governments and so on. But I travel a lot, and I've been in probably well over 50 countries around the world. And I must say that I must agree with my daughter, who believes that Canada is the best country in the world. uh, it's hard to argue that. Probably it's not so. There's an index of happiness, so-called, where I've noticed some Scandinavian countries considered to be the happiest, and some others, like Switzerland sometimes, maybe even New Zealand, maybe. But all in all, I think Canada is really a blessed country, and I'm saying that as the critical Canadian who is ready to criticize. But overall, again, because of my life experience, including travel and everything else, I think Canada provides a viable alternative. I wish I would have such nice words about Russia, but I really don't. I think I think Russia is, for almost all its history, it's been a cancer on the world society, and it's except perhaps a very short period of time. I'm talking about probably a period of Michael Gorbachev when he was first president of USSR. Maybe first 2 years of Boris Yeltsin, but that's it. So we're talking about 5, maybe 7 years at the best of a history of Russia, which is over 1,000 years. And rather than this 7 years, Russia was antagonistic to the world. It was fighting endless wars. It was oppressing its own people, and that's basically what it is. I mean, you can talk about that Russia had a great ballet and great chess players and so on and on and on. And I would agree with all that, but that's not the essence of the country. Okay, it's definitely something else. And I think that today is very important. And I was a couple of days ago, I was listening to a lecture of Jordan Peterson, who stressed how important is not to forget Alexander Solzhenitsyn and his books, Archipelago Gulag, which I read probably 3, 4 times over and over again, because it's such a body of work, well constructed, well written, and that opened up to a world what really Russian regime, all this communist socialism, all this garbage, really all what it is. It's been done, and there's nobody's fault that people are forgetting it, and probably younger generation never even heard about Solzhenitsyn and people like Gulag. That's our problem, not late Solzhenitsyn, but it's there.
It's interesting you say that. I don't think it's the people, right? And we were talking about middle class people being the class that serves both worlds. We serve the rich and we serve the poverty. And I know there are a lot of very rich people who are philanthropists who donate for poverty situations, but in the full aspect, I think what is happening in each of the countries that divide us isn't about us. It's not about the people who work and the people who serve just to live each day. It's about the leaders and what they want. And, you know, I don't know if Russia's right or if the US is right or if China's right. I don't know, right? I just know that every day I wake up, I'm thankful to get up and walk and move and to be able to feed my family and to do things that I have. These are not privileges, yet it's thrown in my face every day. I have privileges. I work for everything I have and everything I own. And, we have leaders that dictate how we will use these things. And sometimes I think these leaders, it's not about the people, it's about their own agenda. And So I think you're right, Sasha. And what is the book you mentioned? I want to read that.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Okay.
He was a Nobel Prize winner for literature in the 70s. And the book is
The
either
Gulag Archipelago.
Gulag Archipelago or Archipelago Gulag. Some people have it one way or another. In Russian, it's Archipelag Gulag. So maybe that's the right way, because I read it in Russian many years ago. Yeah, when I left Russia in 1975, I went to Rome, Italy, where we spent 8 months waiting for Canadian visa. And there, I had access to a very beautiful library where I could read a lot of books. But Archipelago, after I read it first time, I actually bought that book, although it was very expensive. But I bought all three tomes of this book. And now, listen to what you just said, Kim. I have some reservations, and I'd like to share it with you.
Okay.
Do you believe that every nation or all people deserves a government which is there, which has been installed? They don't, right? Is
Mm.
there such thing as election, at least in the United States?
There is an election, but
Right.
it's manipulated.
Hold on. So if people of the United States allow somebody to manipulate their election, they must take it very seriously and make sure that next time it's not going to be manipulated. Of course, it will be manipulated, but it's up to the people to find out the way how to make sure that it's not going to be manipulated.
It
The
is.
manipulation started well before the election in 2016. First of all, Republicans knew very well what a clown Donald Trump is. They knew that firsthand. They were ones who hired Fusion GPS to get all kind of dirt on Donald Trump to stop him. Because they were seeing that he's getting more and more popular because of this TV show and all this stuff. And even CNN, they were giving him a lot of airtime because he was helping their ratings. Now, when it was too late to stop him, they abandoned the project and they had a meeting, the congressmen of Republican Party, and that will never be forgiven them. And I'll tell you, I think that Republican Party for next 30 years, they will lose presidential elections, they will lose House, which is already lost, and they will lose Senate as well. What they did, they compromised completely what the Trump is, and they made an agreement to keep it all in secret and not to discuss it
So
anything. They
I,
knew who he is.
I agree with you, Sasha, in so many ways, but a good evangelist can steal the minds and money from people, and he knows this. He read the books on this. This is why he read and was so intrigued with Hitler, right? Because Hitler convinced people to do the most horrifying acts of mankind in his words. So to be able to manipulate minds is amazing. And if you've ever watched how evangelists grow and they take money from people like PTL, praise the Lord. I don't know if you were around during that time when that became one of the most powerful, actually, things on TV. People lived to watch these two people talk to you and ask you for money, and people gave it by the billions. These people became millionaires just preaching what they said was the word of God, and they were living a life of sin in every fathom way. But on TV, but so people have learned to do this to the very, and I hate saying it, but to the minds that feel like they learn to speak to certain minds a certain way. All right. I'm not going to say they're weak minds, but minds that need a solace, minds that need a figure that seems to be speaking out for them. Right.
And including
How to
weak
do
minds.
this. Well, I'm not going to say it's weak minds because there's a lot of people that are my friends and family that follow every word he says as if it's the Bible. And maybe they just need to hear somebody take up for them and they think he's doing that, but he's not. He's not. He's doing it for himself. And, for anyone to get that offended over 2 Twitters being taken down and to drive a force of millions of dollars to sue people rather than to take all his energies and continue putting it towards the good is not a good mind. But everybody's like, oh, yeah, I'm all behind you because Twitter takes my stuff down. Well, Twitter and Facebook takes my stuff down daily. YouTube takes my stuff down daily because I say something that offends them. Like we talked about breast cancer the other day, or we talked about the rights of people, or I talked about unifying the world. Okay. But for some reason, somebody found that offensive. Or YouTube
Kim,
did.
by the way, you just touched the issue of social media. I just heard Thomas Friedman on CNBC. You know Thomas Friedman. He said that the social media, especially Facebook, but not only Facebook, they're all built the way that they promote all kinds of abusive people, loudmouths, all kind of obnoxious idiots, because it makes the platform work really well. People reposting and reading and sending it farther and farther. See, this is incredible machine that works even now with all these protests.
If
What
it
is the role
don't
of
bleed,
social media?
if it don't bleed, it don't lead. We were told
Yeah.
this by the vice president of CBS when he approached Nick and I about one of our TV shows. Okay, the vice president, or no, he was the president. I'm sorry, he was the president. And we heard this from other presidents of other networks. If it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. They don't care if it's the truth. What they want to do is rile the public up. Why? Because they watch. Do you know every time somebody says we have a vaccine, millions of people leap to watch that, only to hear we're working on it. They're not going to have a vaccine, people. Get a grip on life, okay? They're not going to have a vaccine today. They're not going to have one tomorrow. Do you want a shot put in you of crap that hasn't been tested for at least a year? Some vaccines take 2 years. Why rush something when we've learned how to live with HIV, Ebola, and many other viruses once we learned about them, how to test them, get early detection, treat, and isolate. And that's what we have to do with any virus or disease. But I agree with you. But you want to know what's funny, Sasha? And this was kind of reinforced yesterday. Every social media criteria that established for fact checks, when they say fact checks, every one of those fact checks and monitoring of regulation is imposed by every leader from every country. Every leader puts in the fact checks and regulations that they want social media to abide by. And Trump got taken down by his own policies. His own policies took him down. So, and he's sitting here over just two Twitters out of how many billions has he Twittered since he's been in office? And how many insults and lies has he said about people, like the woman who died at her desk, right? A woman died of a heart attack at her desk at work, and he blames her boss because he doesn't like her boss, right? So he Twitters every once in a while that it was his fault and they should arrest him. And her family has begged him to stop doing that. For 2 years now, they have begged him to stop doing that. And even last week, he's doing it, to just antagonize people that he doesn't like. And let me tell you something else that has infuriated me is he encouraged everyone that works for him to harass the employee at Twitter that did his fact check. Now, is that fair?
Incredible. That's incredible.
Is that fair?
Well, what can I say? It's up to American people. They've got duped in 2016. They've chosen the. I thought he's more entertainer, but the more I read, I figured out that he's just a con man who has to be put in jail. And to put him in jail, you need to elect somebody else, because for all kind of stupid purposes, there is a doctrine that the sitting president cannot be indicted. It's
That's right.
the further stupidity I never seen anywhere else except in the United States. But okay, so he's not going to be for life president either. So he's going to lose his presidency one way or another, and he has to be put in jail. Absolutely.
Yes, he has complete immunity, but what he has is complete support because people know that he's a criminal in many ways.
He
But
is absolutely.
but who votes for him? Criminals, people who
Yeah,
need to hear that there's a voice out there fighting for the common man, and that's what he did. He spoke to the common man voice. And what they didn't realize is that he has done nothing but abuse them every time that he filed bankruptcy and didn't have to pay them while he built his billion-dollar industry. Or when he took that all of that money from the Children's Cancer Foundation, charitable foundation, he took all of that money and funded his own campaigns with it. And then when he got busted for doing it, then he gave it back. Okay. But all of this is public knowledge. Okay. This is not something I'm making up that is a fact, like a questionable fact. All of this is public knowledge of lawsuits or situations. But I mean, who would, and again, I ask people every day that support him, would you support a person who takes from a charitable foundation fund to fund their own campaign? Oh, that was 2 years ago, Kim. What does that matter?
Okay, what's happened about just a few weeks ago, probably 2-3 weeks ago, when he approached governments of Scotland and Ireland, where he has golf courses and hotels or something, and he approached them, so he needs help from those governments because obviously business is not probably doing as well because of the coronavirus or so on. And they asked him to provide financial information so they could make assessment of if he needs help and if he needs, how much. But he refused.
I know. And what bothers me more than anything is people think everything he does is okay. One, because he's a president. This is what they say. Well, he's the president. It doesn't matter. And I go, yeah, it does. Integrity is everything in a leadership role. And granted, I get shot down a lot for being boisterous, but I'm not a leader for a country. I'm just Kim, who has a TV show, who wants to do the right thing and unite people. And I have an opinion occasionally, and occasionally it's on a soapbox. But at the end of the day, everything I do, because everybody puts my toes to the fire, is facts, right? I make sure I can back it up with a fact somewhere that it truly existed, because people are allowed to give their opinion, but then they'll go, well, where's your fact, Kim? Okay, well, here it is. And this is public knowledge from the courthouse, that not even from a news story now. Because, even Nick told me, well, that's from a newspaper. I want it from, and I'm like, some of that data. So something like I learned with domestic violence. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it odd that people don't think these lives matter in domestic violence. Go sit in a courtroom for a week, a domestic violence courtroom. They see more cases in a day, and every day you're going to hear, we're sorry, ma'am, there's nothing we could do for you. We know that he came and sliced your tires. We know that this is temp. We don't have supporting evidence of it. We know that you were running for your life and you couldn't get a video of it. And all day long, you're going to hear this. There's nothing we can do for you. Nothing. And the system has been like this for 20, 30, 50 years, and nobody's ever done anything except Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden is the only one who wrote a law for this. But for some reason, every time a woman, and there's 26 women, females, 26 a minute are beaten just in the U.S. Okay, 26, and nobody. Do you see anyone saying their lives matter? No. And it's not white, it's not black, it's not Indian, it's not one race. It's all races. Mm-hmm. And we got a president who doesn't care about that crime. It's over $8 billion a year. And you know what he said? It doesn't matter. The lives that are lost for this is not enough for us to invest more money in, and he reduced the budget. Joe Biden is the only one who ever wrote a law to protect victims of domestic violence. It doesn't mean I think he needs to be president, but out of the two, he's the one who has integrity, And he's the one who realizes lives matter because he wrote a real law that makes lives matter. And when he initially wrote that law, he wrote it for women of domestic violence, right? Women of violence. He changed the law a few years later. He stays on it every year. He changed the law of victims of domestic violence. And the reason is he found out that men are victims as well. Okay, that's a man of integrity, and that's a man who stands on his convictions in getting a job done. And that's a man who cares about his society. But we don't vote for men who care for their society.
But Kim, do you think we are in a democracy? We elect people, or we select, or we eliminate people? What do you think? Is it election? Is it election, or maybe a combination of selection and elimination?
My voice hasn't counted, and people's voices haven't counted in the United States for many years. It's not been the people's voice that elected the president. It's electoral. So to me, it has been rigged in the wrong way for many, many years. And I don't know that it's rigged to make sure one party gets elected versus the other. I think the pendulum swings heavy based on the larger states, and people can correct me on this, but I think it's a system that needs to be dissolved. I think we need to revamp our system. If we really want the people's voice to matter and count, we need to get rid of the system we have.
When you're talking about electability of Joe Biden, I agree with you. But there is a much larger issue in that is that the country has to get rid of the Donald Trump because this is a cancer. The Joe Biden, well, he's the best what liberals had at the moment. He's not ideal candidate for many reasons, but he was the best, and he was properly won the primaries, and obviously he will be one. But to tell you the truth, if it would be choice, like for me, between Donald Trump and Mickey Mouse, I would vote for Mickey Mouse.
Hey, I'm going to do a write-in vote if a liberal does it. So you know what? I swore I would never tell people who I vote for, because what my thing is nobody's business, because in North Carolina, especially, elections are as bad as who you pull for a basketball team in this state, right? Are you Duke, NC State, or Chapel Hill? You could get into a really big fight. You could lose your job over it. So I've always been very careful, but I always say I'd vote for the right person. In most cases, I always said I voted for the right man, because we only had men candidates, right? So I used to say I voted for the right man. Vote for the right person now. But even now, do you see any women on the table? No women on the table.
Joe Biden promised to have a woman running for vice president.
There are no women that men would vote for. Yeah, he would shoot himself in the foot to put a woman, and he knew that. So he's already selected his vice president candidate, who was doing a debate over the weekend with Pence. But and the debate was senseless. And Biden, I love Biden. Don't get me wrong. I would give anything to buy him dinner and thank him for everything he has done for the rights of victims. But he is not the right person for a president right now. We need a much more powerful, and nothing against his age, because believe me, I think I'm about as old as he is. Nothing against his age, but we need somebody younger. Right, Ankit? I think we need youth.
I completely agree, and I understand. And also, during this pandemic, you need to select the person who can overcome the current situation. And Kim, is there any chance that Obama can come back as a president?
I asked that question as well, because the laws won't allow it, right? But even Bush, man, I would put Bush back into office.
Yeah, because they already have experience, and they know how to run it. And then after their presidency, they're also seeing from a third eye that how the other presidents are doing. And I think Rakesh has something to say.
Rakesh.
Now, when Al Gore was competing against George W., he won more votes. But George W. had the Electoral College.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in Clinton's time, for the first time in 200 years, I think America had a surplus budget. And the man behind it was reputed to be Al Gore. You see? So if you're talking about administration, there's a man who's eminently capable. Now, when you said Obama, I was hoping you were talking about Michelle Obama, frankly. Not
She
not
can run. And
very
Both.
frankly, I
No, I completely agree. I mean, Michelle can also run the.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think he would be a far better
yeah.
president. I think Barack Obama didn't wear the pants, really.
well, no,
He
she's,
he didn't have the guts to do what he
But
needed to do. In my opinion, I think it is Michelle Obama who is, whom, in my opinion, if she'd married somebody else, that man would be the president. You know?
the only thing I don't. So I love the Obamas. Do not get me wrong. If there is a person to bring peace among men and women, it is that family. Okay, but I did not like the healthcare plan they put together. I
yeah,
thought it monopolized the insurance industries only. It was not written for healthcare or affordable healthcare. It was written for insurance. So that's the only thing I was
but
against.
Kim, it's difficult to find a person who has done everything good, and there is no black dot or a red dot on their credit or a mark sheet, because
Right.
it's difficult to find a person.
So,
And
but
also, you need to
how-
balance the things basically. So might
There-
be Obama healthcare could be something they wanted to create some kind of a different situation or an insurance company. Maybe we don't know what's going in the back end. But
well,
after Obama healthcare implemented, you have Donald Trump as president. So you never know what's going on.
I
But
know.
I'll add a point to it. The way we are debating, you know what's happening in Russia. Putin will be trying to get that resolution passed, and he will be the president for till 2030, 60.
Well, and one of the things I'm
You see, what what has Putin done for Russia? He has just I remember there were times where plane loads of Russian women would fly to Dubai to prostitute themselves because the economy was so bad. And all Mr. Yeltsin did was drown himself in vodka. You
And I
see?
mean, when I look at Putin and I look at Trump, they look alike to me for some reason.
Putin has changed. He's brought back Russian self-respect.
Strong, yeah.
No matter what happens, he's changed that one thing, and this is why he's
Certainly.
popular.
He has done that. He has done that. I don't know.
Rakeshji, my concern is not about Putin, but I mean, I'm just trying to understand that are we in a democratic environment, or are we choosing the person to run the country for next 20 years, 30 years?
Democracy doesn't exist. In Britain, you have the House of Lords. In India, you have the Rajya Sabha. In America, you have the Electoral College, all of which frustrate the will of the people.
Yeah.
All of which frustrate the will of the people. So, at least in Russia, they're saying we're not a democracy. At least in China, they're saying we're not a democracy.
No, we're not.
It's pretending to be democracies.
Yeah.
No, but and the thing is that in some odd sort of way, you see that they do in many ways take care of the health of the people, and I think that that time had changed that, right? In many ways, it was always the health and wealth of the leaders, but I think over time you have actually seen some kind of humanity come out of the leadership roles where they realized if it weren't for the people, we would not have a reason to be here. So I think has been some changes in the way leaders treat their people. I do. I could be wrong. I do have interesting news, though. I have somebody from the Chinese that has agreed to come on our show this week. I hope he still agrees to come on our show. He's scared, but he feels like he's been, he trusts us.
Yeah.
And is taking this very cautiously, but he feels like that there needs to be a human voice from China. But his concerns, and it was very bizarre to me, is he's in the same industry as Rakesh. He has a very scientific mind. That we met that way. That's how he and I met, is our science minds, right? And he's in education and teaching, and he came up with an algorithm to teach people how to speak one language to the other.
Translate.
So he's, and he's been trying to get that off the ground. But more than anything, he fears that our education is going to suffer from this, that our children's education is going to suffer from all of this. And he wants to be a voice of education. And so he has asked if I could link him to other like minds on the show, which I thought that was interesting for somebody to reach out to me and say, this is what he said, can I reach out and be on a panel with like minds to discuss this? And so if, Rakesh, if you would be interested, we'll line that up and share, because I think that's what he wants to do as well. But again, I find it interesting and sad how some people are afraid to voice what's going on. He currently lives in the U.S. and but he is currently from the U.S. Anyway, I'm hoping we can get this video going, because I really think if any of you see our friend Tommy shared such a powerful voice from the heart. And I think this is interesting because Tommy and I were talking about this in February. Right out, we after the NFL stuff and everything, we finally reconnected, and that was just like after we got to say hi, how life's going. That was the first things, how do we change this? And in my mind, it's not just in the U.S., the black and whites. In my mind, it's the whole world. How can we make the whole world unite? Because
there's only one. Sorry, Kim. There's one country. That's Switzerland, which has the right of recall. They are the only people that has a genuine democracy in this world.
Switzerland, wow.
Switzerland has the right of recall, and you don't have to hold an election. The next person who polled the next number of votes takes his place if the guy is not performing, and you need a certain number of signatures. I will pull out there. This thought struck me.
You were just so amazing with your knowledge base, like Sasha. It's like all of a sudden something comes up. I think that is an interesting fact. Do you know that in the United States, when we first started presidential elections, the president and the vice president were not allowed to run together as a party? So the election was purely the old-fashioned, the one with the most votes becomes president, the one with the second most votes become vice president, and the one with the third most votes. And it was all based on human, not party. So, yeah. So I don't think we'll ever go back to that. But I think that, again, and I bring this up, and I used to joke about it, but it's not really a joke, is that our system is 18th century. Our political system is 18th century. Our education is 19th century, yet they expect us to come out of school and make magic happen in the 21st century. They expect technology to grow. They expect medicine to grow, but they don't expect to change how we live. And that has to stop. And the pleas that I am getting and the questions that I'm getting from single mothers who have high education and a debt so high from their education, they can't even afford to feed or take care of their children or get them under a roof without working 3 minimum wage jobs, is starting to annoy me. If it's one, it's just, I'm going to have to go change it. I'm just going to have to change it.
In New Zealand, if a single mother is there and the father is alive and she reveals who the father is, he can insist on a DNA test, but if he doesn't, he has to pay anyway. His salary gets docked.
In the United States,
it gets docked from the employer and paid to the lady and just told, you can use this for your children.
The way that happens here, but let me tell you how that game is played. The woman has to get together the money to file a civil suit because somebody changed the precedence of the law. So now the woman has to go, and most women aren't going to have the time or the money to do that. Also, if a man decides to just start beating her and she goes and gets a piece of paper, says he can't come and beat her, it doesn't stop him from coming to kill her. So in many cases, I know I'm not exaggerating this. Please, I'm not exaggerating. Yes. And so you get a piece of paper that says you can't violate this order, and but it costs so much money. You have no idea how much it costs to file that civil suit. It is not free. So somebody said, set the precedence that the women have to go file a suit. They don't used to, they would automatically get alimony or child support. It doesn't happen anymore. And I know this from experience, not just with my sister when she had to go through all of this, but with other friends and people who've reached out to me for help. And I have been in that courthouse. I've been in that courthouse when I leave and the offender jumps on the victim and tries to attack them outside of the courthouse. Okay. So we've learned in the US that the offenders have rights, and they have rights until proven guilty. And the burden of proof is on the victim. You can't win in a system like this. And many women have learned that it's easier to go back and live with the offender or struggle and survive on your own. And my sister chose that. She decided to struggle and survive on her own and work 3 minimum wage jobs or, 3 shifts at the hospitals. She got a job at a hospital paying minimum wage. And she worked 3 shifts to be able to feed her family. And family helped, right? Everybody chipped in to make sure the kids had food. But that was better than taking him to court and having to deal with him coming and slicing her tires and threatening to kill her and the police doing nothing. So I'm just...
A Colt 45 will completely blow his genitals off.
And I go to jail. Trust me, I sat at her front door with a gun for a long time, awake all night. I did. And then that was the only way I kept him away. But the minute I left, something would happen. The house got destroyed one time with a ball bat. The police didn't come get him. A friend of mine was going through the same thing, and the offender was chasing her. And she called the police. She called 911 while she was trying to flee. And they go, "Don't call us. Just keep running." But what if he caught up with her? And no, and I've got videos of where dispatch centers were called and the dispatcher had to listen to the victim get beaten to death. So there is no recourse in the United States, as you speak of. There is one city in the United States that changed the laws. And when a victim's family calls me now, they go, "What do we do?" I go, "Send your daughter or your person to this city to live," because the police do not tolerate it. And they do try to help the victims get jobs, and they work, but they will not allow offender. And they've reduced their fatality rates from very, very high to zero.
It's crazy. This is law of the jungle. My uncle was a ballistics expert. He said if you shot a person with a Colt 45 here, Navy Colt 45, there would just be a V-shaped gash. Everything else would be obliterated. You shoot this guy right in that place so that he doesn't walk for the rest of his life.
Yep. I mean, well, and I own a gun. It took me a long time.
It's not murder. So, you might get a little jail time, but at least the woman who's actually being hit blows it off. And there's no other woman will ever have that problem.
Here's 2 problems. Majority of the victims are afraid of guns. And even one woman finally went, it's a local story here, went to get a gun and learned how to use it. But she bought the wrong kind. See, there are guns that will get dislodged. Well, her offender, along with his friend, tracked her down, and she had a gun. And there's a whole video. It was at an ATM. And she took the gun out and told him to get away, and it lodged. He took the gun away from her, beat her to near death in front of the camera, and shot her with it. Okay, victims, you don't understand. That's not the way to fight this. I've developed and invented the tool to fix this problem, and they don't want to spend the money on it But what they don't realize, and what Trump does not realize, is that this is the most dangerous crime an officer's dispatched to. It is the most dangerous crime an officer's dispatched to, and our country spends $8 billion a year on this crime. And at first, David K. Johnson thought I just made these numbers up, and then he went and researched it and said she's dead on. And but nobody, but it's not just our country. Did you know the UK has the same stats? India has the same stats.
And
Every country has
confess,
the same
even New Zealand has it, I must confess. Even with 2 female prime ministers, the most powerful person in the land, it is still there in New Zealand, unfortunately. And some police officers are proactive, some of them are not. We have a lot of women police officers who are very proactive. I know a certain case where they were really over the top, where the man was my friend, but I think the guy deserved it. Yeah. So they gave him a hard time, but they were still fair. But he could still get away with a lot of stuff, which, in my opinion, he should have been able to get away with. If I were the brother of that woman, I would get that Colt 45 and I would blow that guy's things off and I would go to jail, but I would say nobody will mess with any of my sisters again.
Well, and I need you as a brother then. Everyone needs you as a brother. And that's what this little town did in North Carolina, right? Pretty much every officer became the big brother with a gun. That's it. And let me tell you what, they make offenders monthly come to the courthouse and testify and talk about what they've been doing. If they've reoffended, everything. They have to confess. They have to talk to the public, apologize for their crime. So it's very, very enforced in this one town, and it's working. But will they do that anywhere else? No, because it violates the offender's rights. And this is what I told people that they don't understand, like the officer that murdered that person, okay, is in the United States. He has rights now. He has more rights than anyone else in the world. And the burden of proof is on the victims.
I'll tell you about another case about policemen in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, this was about good 15 to 18 years ago. There was this Indian couple working in Saudi Arabia. Young girl, just got married, went as a bride, and they were staying there together. They were in a park, and 2 Arab policemen, they took a fancy to the girl. They killed the man. They raped the girl and then beat her up so badly they left her for dead. But she survived and told the authorities that this is what happened. And she was then put in a secret place where she could identify the policemen. And in that same garden, on a very tall pole, both these men were hung. These policemen were hung on, and their bodies were kept on that pole. Right out there. Now that is justice.
That and my father always said if you started doing that, people would think twice. And I agree with you that justice is served better on a public podium.
Next day it was done. Moment she identified them, the next day they were up there. And this is not a democracy.
And that doesn't happen enough. And then, you have the false accusations, which irritate the bejesus out of me, which is why I invented the tool I invented, which would reduce both. But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what is it? Why is it such a silent crime? Go ahead, Ankit.
Well, I just wanted to say that why we need media trial to talk about these cases, because there are a lot of cases happening around in the world every day in small and big countries. But whenever something media picks up, it just blows away like anything. And then I understand that it's not in a good positive favor what the cop had done. But what's happening after that is also not acceptable.
No.
And it is also part of provocation. Basically, someone is provoking those people and those. and I think most of them are maybe jobless. That's why they're out, and I'm not sure. But what happened after that is also not acceptable, and we need to come up with the strong rules. As Rakesh said, that there should be a decision, there should be a conviction at the same point of time. We can't wait for months or years just to see that what happened. That's what happened in India as well. I mean, whenever there's a case, it goes for like 5, 7, 10 years until the time they got something and they're out of it. I mean, no one realizes what's happening.
But
So we need to
technology
take
is
it at the
changing.
right point of time. Yeah,
Technology
but
is changing that.
technology, we can use technology, but we need strong determination. We need strong people to take the right decisions at the right point of time, because technology also run by people. So suppose if I know what's happening and if I delete the technology, what will you do?
Well, the thing is that you have to utilize. The problem with the justice system is everything had to be supported with substantial data. You cannot put a person away or death row unless you had substantial data. And I will say, it is a very teetering fence, right? I had a very, very close friend of the family put away to death row. He kept swearing he did not do the heinous crime. His head was shaved twice for 10 years. He got a pardon both times. 10 years later, the same crime occurred. They caught the offender. Now, they had 100% witnesses, pick him out of a line and everything. When they put him side by side with the real offender who finally testified for the crime that he was going to death row for, they looked identical.
My God, that is such bad luck.
I think Kim goes down. Yeah.
Rakesh, I think I would agree with you on the fact that the punishment plays a huge role in disciplining society. So, with the right system of punishment, you can actually almost stop crime. The best example is Iran after the Ayatollah came to power in 1978. They had a big problem. There was a lot of unlawful gathering of black caviar on the shores of Caspian Sea. It was against the law, but it was very difficult to first of all, to find them, second of all, to prosecute, and then whether it's a first time offender or second time offender or 15th time offender or whatever. So they developed a system. In about 3 years, they stopped all the illegal gathering of black caviar. You know how they did it? The second time offender, he would be killed right there.
Yeah.
The question is, how would they find right away, instantly, that he's a second time offender? Guess what? The first time offender, they would cut his hand. So when they caught him second time, they already knew that he is second time offender. So there was no defense of any kind. Killed right on the spot. In 3 years, they stopped it once and for all.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
There
Right.
are very, and again, sometimes we punish or people who are really innocent at the end of the day. The law, sometimes the pendulum swings the wrong way. And we have to be very, very careful. One of the things I'm thrilled about, and I know technology can be twisted, is that I think technology will help enforce a lot of second offenders. It might even prevent them. This is one of the things I've talked with judges who've looked at my invention. It might prevent them from thinking about making that offense, right? Because they know they're going to get caught. And it's like you were saying, when you know what the punishment's going to be when you get caught, that you're going to think twice. And I agree with you, Rakesh. Shoot them where it hurts.
I thought of a solution for the violence problem. The moment there is the first case admitted for the guy who beats up his wife, implant in his brain an explosive which can be controlled by the victim.
But I'm going to be honest with you. There are some victims out there that would just hit that button for the meanness. So yeah,
I agree totally.
That's it. And he should not put himself in that position.
you know what the judges want? They want my device because my device is multi-level tracking, right?
Yeah.
And they want my device, but they want it attached to where. And and if they violate, it sends out a shock. The shock and this is what the judges have asked me: can we attach it? And then we shock them. And I go, but the problem with that is if you give the right to the victim, it might not be. So let's do it if they offend the order, right? If they violate the order in any way, then they get shot there.
No,
So,
you can set up a parameter, just like they have for dogs. You can set up a parameter. If they come within that parameter, boom.
Well, that's what it is. I've designed.
What about putting? What about pushing those victims to border and let them do the border controlling for a couple of months? They'll understand how difficult the job is.
I mean, I agree.
Because Kim, I'll tell you, in India we have a Jaisalmer, which is hot like I believe more than 120 Fahrenheit.
50 degrees.
Yeah, 120 Fahrenheit. Okay, and then we have the world's highest peak where we have a border control. Post, and that is I think minus 70 degrees.
I'll show you my invention.
Those people on those borders, I mean, they won't do anything. I mean, I'll tell you.
Right. Rakesh, I'll show you my invention because the director of Homeland Security said I was the first person to get it right. And the reason why is I thought out all the reasons why it would fail before I built it. And I talked to police officers for 2 years on what would work for them. And
the line is hot. Go to Jacinda Ardern tomorrow. She'll do it.
And I'll show you because what it is it's thresholds defined. And when those thresholds are breached, right, when that territory, that bubble is breached, alerts are sent, victims know, and they can go seek safety, police know, but data is collected to enforce the order. And that's the difference between anything else that has been invented or tried to be put out there. I'll share it with you guys later. But because I'm ready to get it launched.
It is a serious problem in New Zealand also.
They all do. It's the
very serious problem.
So they call it a silent crime because women are afraid.
Yeah. It's the other way around because some of the Samoan women who's really solid, they hit the men too.
Oh, I know. So this is what I love about Biden, right? One day he woke up with his law and he goes, wait a minute, this isn't just violence against women. That was his first law, violence against women. So now it is victims, right? Victims' rights. But that's what I like about him. See, they're going to bust me out every time I use good words about you know who. So I'm going to, we got Alexandra May from South Africa. Maybe she can bring us some joy, but maybe she's got some words to say about the violence in South Africa. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good night.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. You know, we're on stage 3 now in lockdown in South Africa, so we're just slowly getting there, which is great. But yeah, how you guys all doing? It's been a minute.
Oh, doing good. I think we got on an irritable conversation, but not a much needed one. And it's violence against women, domestic violence, right? But it's not just women. And this is what I liked about Joe Biden when he wrote that law. And then years later, he changed it because he realized men are too. Like you were saying, Rakesh, the Samoa women can be just as tough.
Oh, they are tough cookies.
But meanness comes from any human, right? It's not defined in any one particular way. Any mind. Is there a problem in your country with domestic violence?
You know what? There definitely is. There definitely is in this country. And I actually think part of we were speculating at the beginning of lockdown in South Africa why the government has sort of stopped selling alcohol and all that. And part of our thinking was behind exactly that, where abuse can increase because of alcohol. But that's just speculation. But there is a problem. There has been like a helpline that's been opened up because of during lockdown for people that are in abusive households and that sort of thing. So yeah, there is a problem. But I know it's everywhere. I know it's all over the world, and it's just something we all have to fight against.
You know, and a lot of people, are so mind boggled when I share the numbers with them that just in the United States alone, 12 million female victims. And if
Wow.
you add that up, it's 26 per minute.
Wow, that's actually insane.
It is
That's insane.
that we don't do anything about it. And
Yeah.
and you know, I always hear from law enforcement when I first came out to try to make a change, and before I did my invention, I would hear, well, they always go back anyway. And I go, have you ever looked at why they go back? The
Yeah.
protective orders are nothing but a death sentence, because
Yeah.
that's just gas on the fire, that when they get out of jail, they come directly to them with a gun, even though it says you can't have it. It's just a piece of paper. And then the victim is always looking over their shoulder, right? And usually
Yes.
children. And that's where, you know, some really serious fatal situations have occurred.
Well, I also know that I've sort of watched quite a few documentaries on this sort of thing. So I'm no expert at all, but I do also know that also when it comes to stalking and just that level of abuse as well is also not taken seriously. But it's a strange place to be in, especially when you're trying to look in and looking at women, or taking just not women, anyone that's in an abusive relationship or situation, because I was in that space a number of years ago. I was in that sort of relationship. It was more of like a mental abuse, and you just get caught up in it, and you don't really think that you deserve any better. And as someone before, I would always look at these women and I would say, just get out, just leave. And then you find yourself in that place, and then you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm like a hypocrite. I've been telling people to do this, but I'm sitting here actually not getting out myself. And it takes a team around you to help you get out of that space. So I think the important thing is if you are aware of someone that is in an abusive relationship, household, whatever it is, you have to be there for them. Doesn't matter how much they push you away, you've got to be there for them. You've got to be looking out for them, and you've got to be supporting them as much as you can, even if they want to push you away.
No, and I agree. I'm going to just because Nick would be okay with this, I'm going to share with you guys a video clip, a quick video clip of my invention. All right. And to understand this a little bit, this is not the full demo version. Hold on just a second. I'm going to close this. People are mowing yards and stuff out in the country. But anyway, so, but the way this works is that when a protective order is issued, tracking devices are put on the offender and on the victim or victims. The order is entered in with the distance that they're to refrain. Now, my invention contains, because of my background in engineering and technology, contains several layers of backup, right? So if GPS goes down, a Wi-Fi picks up. If Wi-Fi goes down, a particular radio signal comes up. And I utilize things like RFID, just regular radio frequency works. But we but it works. But I put in a threshold that if they, we tiered the thresholds. So because many victims, like you're probably aware, live in the same vicinity. Nobody wants to move every time something happens, right? So if they come into the purple zone, it just might be an accident if they veer off, right? Then no harm. But you got an alert saying, keep your ears open. If they cross over into the next zone, the more of the order, then it's, hey, there might be a problem, and the police are notified and the victim's notified and data is collected. What's great about our artificial intelligence is that we can collect this data for months and determine patterns, like how many times is he breaching it, and could he be truly kind of stalking her, seeing how far. But if you don't mind, I'll share it with you. It's just the quick video clip of how it works, and it really does work. We had it working. and we had a little situation that I got to get fixed. But here we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Hold on just a second. Let me, hold on. I forgot something. I always forget to do that share audio. Here we go. So here we go.
Dashboard that law enforcement will use. We tier the alerts to reduce false alarms. The purple zone is a warning, notifying law enforcement and victims if the offender is getting close to the proximity of the order. Red zone is the proximity of the order and establishes intent. As you can see, Ralph is getting closer to Alice. Once he crosses over into the red zone, a warning is sent. Law enforcement can review the data of any incident by selecting the name of the person and the date. Law enforcement can replay the history, and we show a user-friendly view of the incident, providing you the details of the location with timestamps of the incident.
So that's just the 30-second video. I've got larger videos, testimonies and things like that. And one of the things we did with my tool when we first got it working, of course, the prototypes were pretty big, but we were from North Carolina to Washington, D.C., going to a huge smart city event, and Homeland Security was going to be there as well. And I partnered with Conover, North Carolina Police Department, and they want this working. And I asked them to carry the tool, right? We had an offender, and the police cars that were driving to Washington, D.C. were actually, police. And I said, would you, we'll carry these and you monitor, right? I'm the victim, he's the offender, right? And we had all these different cars driving. And so you would see if we got close together. And here's what's funny. The police officers, when we got there, they go, oh my God, it's so easy. We complicated it. We were like, and then we started watching it all the time, but we didn't have to because it would notify us when he goes, we love it. And how do we get, and we tried as hard as we could to get the government to fund it. We tried and we just, nobody would fund it. And,
wow.
And a lot of times it was because it was, oh, we think it's cost too much money versus the lives. It just, we just could not get, we even had a turn down from one of the government grants that said that, wow, this is great. This is amazing. You're going to save so many lives with this. This is like going to change the world, but you're not academia enough.
Wow.
And we all of us sat there, we scratched, even because Conover Police Department helped us write the grant. So these were police officers.
That's crazy.
Kim, but don't forget, remember we discussed yesterday that some people who applied to be police officers, they were not accepted because of too high IQ.
Right. And I didn't want them to lose their job over this. I've got videos of the police officers coming to a huge quarterly meeting that they have here in North Carolina for law enforcement. And they're not allowed to talk about or to promote tools of another company, right? But they allowed them to talk about our science. And so they got up there, and the officer broke my heart because I know his story, why he became an officer. And he usually doesn't share that with the world, but he said, I feel like my story needs to be told. And see, he grew up in a family where his uncle, out in the country, kind of lived together, right? And his uncle was a very bad offender. And he went to jail one night, that they lock you up for a night or two to cool you down. And he broke out, got drunk, and went to the woodshed when he got to the house and took out the axe and started killing everybody in the family.
Wow.
So he lived. It's not a story he wants the world to know because he doesn't want the world to, but he told it in front of everyone. And he sat there and he said, this invention will save the world. And it will give me a tool I need to protect us as well. But it also will give evidence to support many other things. So, we try to get it pushed through certain factors of Homeland Security to use for other reasons. And it was brought back from certain leaders that this is costs too much money, and it was only like we were only going to charge $5 per day per wear. That's less than a cup of coffee, right? That's less than Starbucks. But they also came back and said that it would violate officers' rights, that it's not fair for them to, because most officers have elected to wear it themselves. And
Wow.
yeah, so for other reasons, but they've offered to wear it themselves. But anyway, sad subject. Happy. I'm hoping will bring happy endings.
Kim, a quick question. Most of this violence is happening within the marriage, right? If that's so, what if you will make part of the prenuptial agreement that for this domestic violation, husband will have to pay 75% of his net worth to his wife? Would that stop domestic violence?
No,
In marriage?
it would make it worse. It would.
Really?
So again, you're putting fire. Okay, this used to be called a crime of passion, and men would get away with it. Like they would be found innocent because it was considered a crime of passion. That law has since been adjusted. It's not gone away, but it has been adjusted, but so that they don't get away with it. But no, you're putting gas on fire every time you make them do. It's about power. People don't understand domestic violence is maybe somewhat about money, but it's not. It's more about, like Alexandra said, it's about over the mind. It's about power. It's about control.
It's the control. It's the control. It is literally that, and they have something over you, even though they don't have something over you. You are. I mean, I know. I don't think it only happens. I don't think it's mainly in marriage. I think it's in any. It could be a friendship. Yeah. I've been mentally abused by a boyfriend, and then I've also been mentally and physically abused by a best friend that I also didn't realize until. And and they've got nothing over you. They've got nothing on you. But it's just that control. It's a control over the mind and your mental and emotional health. That's all they've got control over. So I don't know. I don't think the problem is the world is made up. We all are. The world is made up of broken people, and we're all broken. We all deal. We all have issues, and I don't think the problem will ever go away. Unless every single one of us is completely fixed. The problem's always going to be here. But what we can do is do what we can to be there for people that need that we've got to look at our communities. And I think that's what sort of COVID has been really cool at doing, is that it's almost brought communities close together. You're suddenly looking at, in South Africa, you're looking at buying local, you're supporting your local business, you're supporting the flower shop down the road. So the community is being built. So if you're building that community stronger and stronger, hopefully our relationships are going to get better. And maybe that will be part of the problem solving, and hopefully governments get behind projects like Kim's, where it's like, this is important, this is good stuff, this is important stuff. I can see how it's useful. I can see how it's useful for a lot of different aspects. So
that's what Homeland Security said. Homeland Security, the director of Homeland Security, said we could use this to save FBI agents in airports when we're attacked, because they could be wearing. Well, one of his friends bled out when they were under attack in one of the airports, which nobody heard about. It was one of those instances. I don't know how they never got it to news or anything, but his friend, he called me up and he said, "Can you make this work in a building if we can?" And I said, "I can. You know, the Z-axis hasn't been solved yet, but we'll solve it." And we solved it in less than 3 months. But again, the government wasn't buying it. So I spent a lot of money making things work that didn't get funding. But it's not that big of a deal. It works. This is what I tell people. It works.
Sure.
We just got to find the right way to get it launched, because, you know, it's going to cost money at this point to build it out, beta test. Even though it works, you want to beta test and tweak. But the thing is that the answers are there. It's up to us as people to make it happen. And this is what I was telling somebody the other day when he said, you know, I want my kids to go to school, or somebody said, I want to open up my shop, but they're not letting me open up my shop. And I said, write your own policies and send it to the governor or to whoever your leader is, and say, this is the this is proactive action I'm going to take to protect others and myself. You write your own policies for your hair shop, right? Or you write your own policies for your recording studio, and you share it with them. But we got to at some point take some control and responsibility. We can't let them tell us everything, right? And that's what I was kind of doing with this tool. I was saying, okay, every time I went to court with my sister, you said there wasn't enough substantial evidence. What if we do this? Now you have evidence. But I knew it had to be more than just that I had to prove that they were going to save money, that it was false reporting proof, that we would reduce the false alerts and things like that. So I put more, but we sometimes have to take, as people, we can't wait for them. If we wait for the leaders to do something to take care of us, it's not going to happen. It's just, what is your thoughts on that, Alexandra?
Sorry, I think Rakesh had wanted to say something as well.
Oh, I didn't see. Okay, Rakesh.
I was,
sorry.
This, we have this, all this is hinges on one thing, that the rights of the person accused. Okay. With 7 billion human beings on Earth, I'm going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons here.
Go ahead.
We can afford to have a situation where, if people don't want to be accused, don't put yourself in that situation. Okay. So if you can't defend yourself, you pay, sometimes with your life. So this is it's a controversial point of justice, and so I don't.
Are you meaning the death penalty?
It could be if the offense is serious enough. Yes, if it is serious enough, yes, the death penalty. If in a situation, I know that at one time in India, if a police officer was accused of rape, the onus of proof of innocence was on the police officer because he was invested with the power of the state.
Right.
So instead of innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
So instead of innocent until proven guilty, it's you're guilty, and you for those extreme ones like rape, murder, that sort of thing, you are guilty, and you got to prove yourself innocent. It just makes it complicated when you're falsely accused, but.
Only if you're a police officer.
Only if you're of obligation to the public servant.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
Okay.
some kind of, person with power. Then you would say that since the state has given you that power, you need to put yourself in a, don't enter a house, like my grandmother would tell me, don't enter a house where a woman is alone. Don't enter that,
because you're going to get shot. And I don't think about that female that thinks twice or blinks before I shoot, going, don't come into mine because you will get shot. I have emptied the gun before.
And I'm fine with that, because the rule is you don't put yourself in a position where you can be accused of something.
Right. Yes, and I also agree with what you observed earlier about the right type of punishment. And I wouldn't mind to see a return of public execution by guillotine, because that would definitely make a big public event and could stop future offenders.
Definitely a statement.
Okay, so I'm still fine with death by injection, and I don't understand why they have to use weird drugs if they can't just put them to sleep. So all too often they go, oh, they exploded right there before us. And I go, what the hell did you inject them with? Why, many people unfortunately commit suicide every day with sleeping pills. Why can't we just do that? Why does it have to be something that makes them explode inside? So to me, they said, oh, we're injecting them because it's humane. What the hell are you injecting? Excuse me. What are you injecting them with if it's supposed to be humane, when we know people die from taking sleeping pills?
Potassium cyanide will kill you. For a long time, people couldn't even tell how potassium or sodium cyanide tasted, because by the time the person tasted it, he was dead.
Good. There are gases that do that. One breath of the gas, it's on the oil rigs, right? And they use the humans as the canary. So they send a crew of people up to check it, and if the guy falls over, the rest are supposed to run. No, this is today, folks. I am not making this crap up. This is.
But Kim, now we have one more tool, which is known as Corona. So if someone is doing something, we just put Corona.
Spray him
there.
with Corona.
There you go. Every time we have a mass gathering now, we have mass Corona. But, and again, this is what I tell people. No, we cannot live our lives in fear, but we can live our lives with facts and transparency and honesty and integrity. And I think integrity needs to be back in our lives. And I think we lost a lot of that globally. And I don't think the normal men and women lost integrity. I think our leaders have lost most of them, not all of them. But I think most of them have.
When they get so much power,